Welcome to the module in which we will talk about how do we create value for different segments of market. In this module, we will be talking about market segmentation, market targeting, and market positioning. In short, we call it STP. Let's start with a case study of Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, one of the most favorite, amongst the most favorite brands in the world, very well-known brands in the US, of course, and rival brands for coffee. So Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin' now as they change their name, as well as Starbucks. Usually they have very different consumer bases. Now, of course, both of them serve coffee and somewhat some sort of bakery items, but mainly coffee, but they have very different consumer groups. Now, what happened was that there was a very interesting study, market research, as we discussed in the previous module. Dunkin' Donuts engaged into a market research study. They got 50 of their most loyal customers, and then they also got 50 of the most loyal customers of Starbucks, gave both these groups gift cards, and then asked them to switch their brand. So the loyal customers of Starbucks were asked to come to Dunkin' every day of the week for 1 week, and then Dunkin' Donuts customers were asked to go to Starbucks for 1 week every day, get their coffee. At the end of this experiment, both these groups were surveyed. They were asked questions about their preferences, and one main question that was asked was whether they were willing to change their brand. None of them wanted to change their brand. What was more interesting was their perceptions about the rival brand. So people who were in Starbucks, they went to Dunkin' for a week, got their coffee. After a week, they still thought that Dunkin' was not very classy. They also thought that Dunkin' was a little bit cheap. Whereas people who were loyal to Dunkin', when they went to Starbucks, they came back and their comments were funny as like, I don't know why Starbucks make everything look very complicated. I don't know why do they call small size as tall. I don't know why do they call different type of fancy names for everyday terminologies like small, medium, and large. So that was very interesting experiment that showed how people react to different brands and how people develop loyalty to particular brands. Now, what's interesting here is that both these coffee shops, who are very successful in their own right, have got two things in the right place. Number one, which customers they want to serve. Number two, how do they want to serve them? And that is the answer to segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Now, usually when we look at Dunkin', it's an everyday type of place. It's a lowbrow, blue-collar place. Everybody goes there. Even their tagline says, America runs on Dunkin'. Whereas when we look at Starbucks, it's a company, it's an organization that targets a higher income group because the prices are relatively higher. Even the ambience and the physical environment portrays that type of high income level vibe. Members of Starbucks want to look at them as individuals, whereas members of Dunkin' look at them as a collective group. So those are the differences, but again, what it shows is that these companies have got it right on which segment they are focusing on and how are they focusing on them. Usually in target marketing, we have three different steps. Step number one is we identify bases for segmenting the market and we develop profiles from these segments. That goes under market segmentation. Step number two is we develop different measures of segment attractiveness. Of course, once you segment the market into multiple segments, then you have to decide which segment is attractive for you. We also then select the target market segment. This is part of market targeting. From market targeting, we go to the third step, which is the last step called market positioning. Here, we create specific positioning or market offering for each of the target markets. We also create separate marketing mix for each of the target markets. Step number one for market segmentation is where you already decide that you cannot reach out to the entire market. You have to create segments in it. Of course, not everybody in the market behaves the same way. So when you segment the market, there needs to be some sort of basis for that segmentation. In marketing, we have 4 different bases of this segmentation. Number one, geographic segmentation. Number two, demographic segmentation. Number three, psychographic segmentation. And number 4 is called behavioral segmentation. We will talk about each one of them in detail in the upcoming slides. Geographic segmentation is the most common form of segmentation, which means that you segment your market based on the geography. So let's say if there's a company called McDonald's, they want to segment their market so they can do it based on continents: Asia, Europe, North America, South America, Africa, So it can be done easily that way. But you might also have a small restaurant in your own city with multiple branches. They might divide their market into geographical locations based on different parts of the city: northern part, southern part, eastern part, or western part, or central part of the city. In any case, anytime when a company is segmenting based on geographical location, that would be called as geographical segmentation. The second part of segmentation is called demographic segmentation. Now this is, as the name suggests, segmentation done based on demographic characteristics. For instance, when you go somewhere and you look at the restrooms, there's a male restroom, there's a female restroom. That's an example of demographic segmentation. You segment based on gender of the consumers. You might also have gone to clothing stores where you see the men's area, the children's area, and the women area. Again, demographic segmentation. You might also have seen places like if you go to Chick-fil-A, you have separate areas for children and then you have separate areas for other type of people. Again, demographic segmentation. So anytime when the segmentation is based on people's age, their gender, their living style, their occupation, their marital status, any type of demographic characteristic, we would call it as demographic segmentation. Here is an example of two different cruise lines. Number one, it is Disney Cruise Line. Number two, it's Viking Cruising. Disney focuses on children or families, and if you look at the website, you can see very clearly the photo they have used to market. It's a family with happy faces, happy memories. Viking Cruises, on the other hand, focuses on aged people who are retired, who have a lot of dispensable income or disposable income, and who are looking for adventures. Then again, if you look at the Viking Cruises website, they are looking at a solo female traveler in Europe somewhere trying to cruise through the European rivers. So that's an example of demographic segmentation. Demographic segmentation is becoming more and more popular in restaurants and hotels and things like that. In fact, one very good example of this would be Virgin Hotels. Virgin, that belonged to Richard Branson as a company, created a hotel group which is specifically targeting female travelers. Everything in the hotel rooms, from the colors to the type of amenities to the type of room and to the type of features of the hotel, shouts women travelers or female travelers. So that's again another example of demographic segmentation. The third basis of segmentation is psychographic segmentation. In psychographic segmentation, we make the segmentation based on buyer's social class, their personality characteristics, and their lifestyle. Here, the same demographic segment or geographical segment can have multiple psychographic segments. So for example, we have a company called Zipcar. Zipcar is a company that provides car rentals, but in bigger cities where parking is an issue. People live in apartments, they don't have parking. So Zipcar uses the parking garages or things to park the car rentals. People can rent the car from one place, they can leave it in another place without thinking about the parking or overnight parking. And Zipcar usually markets itself based on psychographic segmentation because of the lifestyle. It's a very busy urban lifestyle consumer who normally uses Zipcar. We also have social classes, middle class, lower class, upper class. And again, everywhere you see the type of hotels, airlines, cruise ships, everybody is doing this segmentation based on psychographic characteristics. The last base of segmentation is called behavioral segmentation. Behavioral segmentation is the type of segmentation where market is divided into different groups based on consumers' behavior, their attitude, their knowledge, their response to a product. You may have seen things like occasion-based promotions, where there's Memorial Day sale, there's Valentine's Day sale, Mother's Day, Father's Day. These are all occasion-based events where a lot of sale is generated only specific to that event. This is called behavioral-based segmentation because people are showing their behavior to different type of things. We also have something here called benefit sort segmentation, where normally people react to products based on the benefit it provides. So let's say if I am going with my family, with my kids to a restaurant, for me it's important to think about if the restaurant caters to kids, if it's having alcoholic products or if it has enough seating space for kids or some kids activity, I would think it provides value to me. Whereas if a couple is going for a dinner for their date night, they will look at completely different benefits. So any segmentation based along those lines would be called as behavioral segmentation. Now, once the market is segmented, then the next logical question would be, which of these segments should I focus on? To answer this question, companies normally look at effective segmentation. There are 4 requirements for it. Number 1, accessibility. How easy it is for companies to access that particular segment. Number 2, actionability. Can we provide proper programs to reach out to this segment? Number 3 is substantiality, which means that are these segments big enough to provide proper profit? And measurability, can we measure the revenue coming out of each of this segment? So out of all the segments that we create in the market, we use these bases, these 4 categories or these 4 features to determine which segment is the best segment to target. Now, once we limit the list of all the segments, the second stage for us would be market targeting. In market targeting, we evaluate the market segments. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, there are 4 different ways of doing that. But here, we normally collect data. We collect current segment sales. If it's a market that is already mature, we look at what are the sales from that segment. If it's a new market, then we look at projected sale figures or projected revenue figures. In here, we also then have an expected rate of profit or expected rate of return on that segment. We also collect data about the market trends, our macro-environmental factors, as well as some micro-environmental factors. Once we have all this data, we also then need to decide what are the strengths of the company. A market can be very, very beneficial or very attractive for a company to target, but if the company doesn't have strong capabilities in that area, I think it would be a suicidal mission for them to target that market. Usually when companies have market targeting, they have to pick up out of 3 market targeting strategies. Number 1 is undifferentiated marketing. Number 2 is differentiated marketing. And number 3 is concentrated marketing. So in undifferentiated marketing, a company ignores all the segments. They try to mass market to the entire market. They create one marketing mix, sell things to all the market. Walmart is a good example. They are selling things to everybody. So that is undifferentiated marketing, where we do not differentiate in any segments. Number two is differentiated marketing. Here, a company divides the market in different segments and then target each segment with a different marketing mix. Think about Marriott. Marriott has multiple brands under its belt. Some of them are luxury brands like the Ritz-Carlton. Some of them are not so luxury brands like Fairfield Inn or something. Some of them are in the middle, long-term residence like Residence Inn. Now, for each of these brands, there's a different type of market they are serving. And Marriott is creating different marketing mixes for each of these brand segments. So that is called differentiated marketing, where a company creates a separate marketing mix for each market segment. The third one, which is not very common one, is called concentrated marketing. So concentrated marketing is where a company doesn't go to the entire market or one segment of the market. They look at a larger market segment with a very special focus. They create a very unique marketing mix in order to target that market. For example, a restaurant may focus on families only with smaller kids. A good example of this would be Chuck E. Cheese. It's not a restaurant, it's a gaming arcade place, but it brings food into it and focuses on a very specific market segment. So those type of marketing would be called as concentrated marketing. Once the market segmentation and market targeting is done, we move on to the third stage, which is market positioning. Market positioning is where we create a value proposition for our target market. Now, you may remember in the initial modules, we talk about what is value proposition. It is understanding what is valuable for our customers. Once we understand what is valuable for our customers, we then provide that value as a market offering. Now, of course, if a company is deciding to go with a specific segment, or with multiple segments, or with no segment whatsoever, they still need to decide on what is the value proposition. I gave you an example of Walmart. Walmart's value proposition is to provide things at cheaper prices or lower prices. So it doesn't matter who they are marketing to, they really want to sell things cheaper. So that is where market positioning comes into the picture. So usually when the companies are trying to target their markets by offering market positioning, they need to think about something very unique, something that cannot be imitated by their competitors, something that can go long term. An example here would be Wendy's. So Wendy's usually say that they never use frozen meat, hot off the grill. That's the way they position their product. Burger King is known for their flame grill, Whopper food or Whopper burger. So that's the way they position their product. And that's important because market positioning is going to stick into consumers' mind. It creates their perceptions. It creates a long-term image in consumers' mind, which is very difficult to change. So when companies are trying to do market positioning, they also think about differentiation. How do they differentiate themselves from customers? Because again, remember, for hospitality and tourism industry, it's highly competitive. It's an industry where you have a lot of service providers and you also have a lot of service consumers. So for consumers, they need to have a very clear picture of your company or your product or your service. This can be done by differentiation. Now, companies can use their physical environment to differentiate themselves. They can use the way they are delivering services or their employees or their location. All of these things can be used to differentiate companies from them to another competitor. Basis of differentiation should always be something that is difficult to copy by the competitors, and that should be focusing on a specific need or want of the consumers. When we talk about market positioning, one tool that many organizations use is called perceptual map or market positioning map. In this map, we pick up 2 or 3 features about the industry in which we are operating, and we see where are we on that map versus our competitors. Here, as you see in the picture, there's a matrix. On x-axis, we have something called the level of service, whether it's high level of service or moderate level of service. On y-axis, we have how expensive or cheap is the hotel. Now, depending on these 2 criteria, the level of service and the price, we put us and different competitors on this map based on consumer perceptions. And then we see where do we stand as compared to people who are directly competing with us or they are generally competing with us. This is an important tool because it also helps us reposition ourselves should we need it. So to wrap up in this module, we talked about 3 different things. We talked about market segmentation, we talked about market targeting, we talked about market positioning.